Hello and welcome to MotorInc First. Shumi has been to Kunur, which is easily my favoriteest place on the face of the earth. And he went there to ride a motorcycle, which the name itself is one of my favoriteest names up until now.
Sirhan.
The classic name from Royal Enfield, the 350. I have openly said I love it. But when he asked me, and he did ask me, and that was super kind of him, he said, do you want to go and ride the 650 there? Right? Because it's Kunur, it's the classic, he knows I love it. And I said, I don't think I can handle it.
Why not?
Because I am prepared for disappointment.
Oh, what a classic feeling to have.
I don't say that because against hope. I'm hoping that that's not the case. But obviously, you know the background. It's the Bear, it's the Super Meteor, it's the shotgun, all of which with that rear suspension.
What rear suspension are you referring to? They don't have rear suspension.
Correct.
They're so retro, they're hardtails.
The hardtails, right? Yeah.
The Bear is so well set up that when a 100-kilo guy sits down, it feels like the suspension rises up to receive him rather than sags.
Okay, so those are the fears in my head, and which is why I said no. I'd much rather leave the place also detached from that emotion. And I said, I won't, thanks so much for the offer, but you go ahead.
No, and the fears are justified, right? Because it would be 6 in a row if that was the case, with the exception of the
It's
Himalayan.
6 now?
So it started with the Hunter,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
we were in Thailand together
Correct,
for, and
correct.
that was before motoring actually started 3
Yeah.
years ago. Then Super Meteor, then
Yeah.
Shotgun, then Gorilla, then Bear. It's 5. And Classic 650, if they have messed it up, I'm not giving anything away. That would be 6.
Suspense. Suspense. Okay. Where do we start with this bike?
Classic 350 upgrade.
It is.
In many ways, yes. So I was joking with Mark. Mark is the head of global product planning, I think. His exact designation, I'm not sure. But Mark, we said, so basically it's like what? A 25% zoomed in classic 350. So first he had a good laugh at that idea. And then he says, do you know how awkward the motorcycle will look if we actually did
Scale
that?
it up. Huh.
Right?
Yeah.
So what we should know as a backdrop to this is Shotgun 650, Classic 650 were worked on together. The Classic was actually supposed to come out first.
Oh, really?
And then the Shotgun could have been presented as a custom derivative based on the Classic 650.
Okay.
But I believe the Classic 650 had so much intricate detail on it that this project got delayed and the Shotgun came out first. But for what it's worth, they are the same bike in terms of the frame, more or less. It doesn't mean the rear suspension is the same. I'm saying the frame is the same, more or less. I know where your concerns are, and I'm coming to it, okay? And Kunur was a very clever place to pick to launch the bike to on that front, right? So the big changes between the two bikes, because the chronology has changed, I'm not going to say from this to that. I'm just saying differences. The Shotgun has a different wheel size set.
Right.
The Classic 650 for the stance has a different wheel size set. You've got upside down forks there. You've got right side up forks on the Classic 650.
Right.
You've got different suspension because this is the heaviest motorcycle Royal Enfield makes.
The Classic.
The Classic 650, it's all metal. Every single panel you see is metal. It's really heavy. Not that you'll feel it all the time, but when you see the number, it is a big number, 243 kilos weight. Okay. There are 1200cc V4s that are roughly the same weight or lower, but this is a hefty motorcycle.
The Busa is 270. This is 30 kilos away from up. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, from a 1300cc inline 4, yeah. So this is a large motorcycle in format, and they've been conscious about how the design has to work as the primary appeal because of two reasons. One, it is in some ways the flagship because it talks to their most important product. It also has to appear to be an upgrade to the Classic 350, so it has to have a visual similarity to it. And if they were to just be able to upgrade Classic 350 customers to Classic 650s, that's a pool of, I think it's 40 lakhs or some big number like that of people who already have 350s. And in many ways, they also presented the Classic 650 as the replacement for the idea of the Classic 500.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so this is the context into which this motorcycle goes in. One of the things that Royal Enfield was very, very insistent on reminding us is that the details on this motorcycle are very, very carefully done. And a lot of places you will see it, right? For example, when you look at the hubs, these are tubed tires, but when you look at the hubs, they are steel hubs, they are chromed, they are beautiful looking. Okay. And yeah, they will be slightly hard to keep clean, but because they're not brushed metal, it'll be easier to maintain them. They are chromed, unlike the engine cases, which is a traditional issue with Royal Enfields. They give you brushed metal engine cases and they are very, very hard to keep clean.
They get blotchy.
That's going to happen to the Classic 650, unfortunately, also as well. If you look at the exhaust shape, it is very, very similar to the shotgun shape, but the shotgun has black, this has chrome. And therefore, it does sound pretty similar to the shotgun in terms of sound also. The Bear's engine tune gives this motorcycle more torque, but that's a single exit exhaust. So they couldn't use it on this motorcycle. So this goes back to the other state of tune, which has pre-existed the Bear. So the same numbers as before, roughly 47 PS and 52 Newton meters. I'll put up the numbers. The difference is the sprockets have been changed because this is a heavier motorcycle.
Relative to the
shotgun. Royal Enfield puts 2 extra teeth on the rear sprockets. So this is a 42, where the shotgun runs a 40. Which doesn't make this a more accelerative motorcycle because of the weight. It's still very much like a Classic 350 in the sense of it's a calm engine. You can push it, it will go fast, but it feels like it just rather chill out. When you see the footage, you will realize that there will be 2 different kinds of footage in this, because I pushed the motorcycle for a very limited amount of time and I enjoyed it, but it's not what the bike does best. What it does best is it's a reasonably quick pace, but you're taking it easy. You're not going to full throttle everywhere. And you will notice that my throttle hand doesn't actually move all that much because there is so much torque on the 650 twin. You don't have to work very hard, both uphill and downhill. As long as you take it easy, the 650 is in its zone. Because the seat is cantilevered, sort of like the shotguns, in your bum, you will feel a little bit extra vibration than you're used to from the 650 twins. We noticed this on the shotgun. It's also there on the Classic 650. It is not a deal breaker by any stretch of the imagination. It is just a function of how the seat is organized. And therefore, this is officially a 2-seater motorcycle with the same rack more or less as the shotgun, which you can take off to convert into what you're looking at in the pictures, which is the single-seater. This time, Royal Enfield did not make the mistake of saying, oh, it's so easy to remove. You can switch between the 2 modes happily. You cannot, because you have to take off the top suspension mount bolts on both of the rear shocks, which I would not want to do at home because it requires a specific torque to be tightened to. I would rather have the dealership do it. And if the Royal Enfield dealership actually uses a torque wrench to torque that to spec again, honestly, I would also be surprised. So the suspension, brakes, etc., slight retuning has happened because of the different format of the motorcycle. It also feels slightly different, but all the aggregates are premium. So you get the brushed finish metal levers with adjustability for span, which is important. We'll come to that. From effectively the Super Meteor. You get the same switch cubes as before, but they are chrome.
Oh, really?
Which means you might like looking at them, but they're still extremely annoying to use because Royal Enfield has decided to use these weird rotary switches, which they can't seem to look past. Fully chromed mirrors, but they have the same issues that normal Royal Enfields have, which they will become loose and you'll have to keep adjusting them, but Royal Enfield has not paid attention.
Did it happen on the ride?
No, not for me, thankfully. Not for me. You've got the same LED headlight as every Royal Enfield right now, except for the Bullet 350. And LED pilot lamps, etc., etc. The nacelle is basically redesigned to be a larger size, but it's the same looking nacelle. It has the same pilot lamps, etc. So visually, it looks like a longer Classic 350. It looks like a bulkier Classic 350.
But to put a point on it, there's nothing actually shared with the Classic 350.
No.
This is a bigger motorcycle, so everything, it looks, and this happened when the 350 came out, the Classic, the J series one. Everybody's like, it's the same bike. Yes, it's the same bike in spirit, but it wasn't actually the same bike. And in this case, even my first glance at it was like, wow, it just looks like a Meteor Classic 350.
And that Meteor is a very, very good word to use because it does look substantial and chunky and therefore so nice looking. The only visual interruption may be the gap between the top of the rear wheel and the bottom of the rear fender, which when you sit down disappears. But when you sit down, you can't see the gap anyway. So it's actually relevant. But that might be the only element that bothers you. But otherwise, it's a very well-finished motorcycle. And the only thing Royal Enfield have left to figure out on this front is how to manage their wiring. Because when you start noticing the wiring, you'll still notice that it's not the neatest motorcycle that they could have made. The rest of it has fallen into place.
And now we're going to get to the meaty bit about the story. Before we go there, I have to tell you that there's a little bit of history here because,
How can you have a Royal Enfield story that has no history there?
but it seems like Royal Enfield has forgotten about that history because it was, I think, back in 2009 that Royal Enfield first got the Classic 350 out
Correct?
with
September, I think. Yeah.
with the UCE, and that ride was from Chennai to Kunur. And that was the first time I went to Kunur, and I loved it back then. And I was telling Shumi that, man, I have so many happy memories of that ride. For Kunur, I remembered the hotel, and I told him we'd stayed at the Gateway Hotel back then. And it was at that point I remember that ride so clearly because I was always that guy saying, yeah, Aris are cool, but not for me. And I rode the Classic all the way there, and I was like, man, this is so much fun. And I got what Aris meant to people, and I got it because the usability got so much better. It still vibed and all, but it had better performance than anything before. And sorry, what we rode up was the Classic 500. Back then, the 350, they had
got
the
it.
350 and the 500. What we rode was the Classic 500, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I did come away thinking differently about Royal Enfields from that ride. And strangely enough, I asked Shumi, did Arish did?
Nope. We stayed at the Gateway Hotel too. And no, it
I
was not
know.
mentioned. What was mentioned is that that building is 300 years old and it's been a hotel like this one for 100 years. So the hotel itself has history. But not a single mention of the fact that the Classic 500 came to this hotel.
Correct. And I was genuinely shocked about it. I thought that's why they've done it, that it's happening in Kunur because it's like the Classic again, right? This is the Classic for the new generation.
No, there's lots of strange things. So I was I was looking up some specs somewhere and I realized that they have a color on this bike called the Bruntingthorpe Blue.
Okay.
It's a nice looking color. It's not on sale in the UK.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, we get it. They don't. But it's their name. But to me, the nicest looking bike, I'm conflicted. I don't think it's the black chrome. I think it's the Vallum red.
Vallum red.
Yeah, which is the one, the maroon and white combination.
Oh.
I think that is the really good looking bike in this group.
Did they have the mint green? Because
They had the teal, yes.
they have it?
Yeah.
They had it on the ride there also?
Yeah. They were display bikes. All of us rode black chromes.
Because that was the color for the Classic 500 when it came out, right? When the UC came out, that was the color.
Yeah, and apparently there's some story about how it is a mistake, that color.
Oh, really?
Some book got misprinted and this teal happened as a mistake.
Okay.
It was supposed to be like a powder blue or something, if I remember correctly. And somebody at Royal Enfield, I think it was Mark Wells at that point, who was not working at Royal Enfield but with Royal Enfield, he saw that in that book and he said, this is such a great color, and the teal was born and the teal was happy and everybody loved it, etc. And they later put it two and two together and the author said, yeah, they messed up the printing of that book, all the colors are wrong. After which that mistake, that teal color actually happened.
Oh, interesting.
So you have 4 colors on the Classic on sale. You have the Vallum red, which is the cream and maroon. You have the Bruntingthorpe blue, which is white and light blue. Then you have the teal, which is the middle model. And you have the black and chrome, which is the top model.
Oh, really?
And the prices go from 3.37 lakhs up to 3.50.
Apart from the colors, are there any feature differences? Of course?
Zero.
This is just the color.
Royal Enfield doesn't do much by way of features. I think for the Gorilla they did, where there was the analog digital dash on the bottom models and the TFT on the top. And I think eventually they just stopped the bottom model also. And everything gets a TFT.
So it's basically color prices.
It's just color prices.
Okay.
And at 3.5 lakhs ex-showroom for the chrome, it is well priced because they are still under the Super Meteor and the Shotgun. So a lot of people, it seems, were expecting that because it's the Classic badge, etc., Royal Enfield would place this on the top. But why would you? The Super Meteor has so much more in terms of at least equipment and size. So Super Meteor sitting on top makes complete sense to me. The Shotgun, if you think about
Super Meteor has a lot more.
it's a slightly larger motorcycle. The foot pegs are slightly more ornate. The body panels are slightly larger. The top model has a screen, etc., etc. So it has more.
It's a more lifestyle position in that sense, further away. Okay.
And simply in terms of sheer metal, it has more metal. And the fenders are larger and everything, right? So from that perspective, I couldn't see the Classic sitting on top. And it is not. It is sitting third from the top, as it were. And I think that's fine.
Okay. Cool.
So that is the story of the Classic 650 in terms of what they built. Right? Now to ride, first things, you will see that weight number and you will get scared. But Royal Enfield is very good at balancing their motorcycles. This is another extremely well balanced motorcycle. You might feel it in the parking lot if you have to walk the bike around, especially if it's a sloped parking lot in a hilly area. But outside of that, I would be surprised if you noticed it anywhere else.
Not even picking it off the stand and stuff like
Not
that.
really, no. In fact, the handlebar has issues, but weight is not one of them.
Okay.
Okay. This also has traditional Royal Enfield issues. The prong for operating the side stand and the center stand are both very close to the exhaust. You will put your boot against the chrome in the process. Be extra cautious. It's really hard to clean once you mar it because you have to get the exhaust hot and then you have to try and wipe it off, etc., etc. You have to be cautious. I did get my boot onto the exhaust multiple times. Traditional issue, nothing new about it.
That one little scar will be there.
That one little scar is likely to happen to you. To ride, I've already told you this, it's a peaceful motorcycle. And it's not a slow, peaceful motorcycle. What it likes to be is peaceful. You can push it. If you push the pace, it can do everything, but it will very, very easily remind you that saying this is not how a classic 650 is driven. So think of this as a calm and reasonably quick motorcycle is the best way to put it.
Right.
We were doing a 63-kilometer loop, some of it down the main Kotagiri Ghat. Then at Dodabetta, we took a right onto back roads, and then we came out on the other side, which is basically at Kannur again. And I did this loop 2 times, so I've ridden this motorcycle roughly 125 kilometers, all in the twisties. There's no real straights on this stretch. So I think straight line stability, we should be okay. I didn't see any reason to believe it would be otherwise. Cornering, it is a very, very decent cornering machine. I'm not going to say anything more than decent because it's long, it's low and it's heavy. So there is a certain poise with which it likes to turn. You can't really hustle this motorcycle.
Okay.
And the people who did try hustling, they immediately had peg scraping and stuff. And I didn't have a single one of those things without going any slower than those guys because you just have to be calm with this motorcycle and then everything works.
Before you start, just for that one thing, before you get just tell me, because I want to set some context. Okay.
Say na.
Then you finish
Say
that.
na.
Just,
Ask the question.
no. Before I ask you that question, I have to explain why this is a big deal, right? Because we've seen on the J series platform, you have the Meteor, right, which was one kind of motorcycle, and it worked well enough. Like he prefers the Meteor, I prefer the Classic. But I think what can't be argued about the Classic is it has this very flavor in terms of the engine character. Is it the Meteor feels more responsive? It feels more alive. The Classic has that personality of, hey, let's take this a little bit calm.
Correct.
But that engine can sit at 100 on the Classic, 100, 110 on the Classic also comfortably. Like you can cover distances with it in that zone.
Correct.
Which is good. And you would expect that from a 350 today for sure.
Yeah.
And that RE is doing it was definitely satisfying. The surprise for me with the Classic 350 was because we'd ridden the Meteor prior to that, was how well that suspension worked.
Correct.
It was a suspension setup that worked beautifully for your everyday kind of stuff. And at the same time, when you took it to, and I had ridden it up to Ladakh that one time, and in Ladakh, and I was so impressed with how well it handled those roads, despite now not being the Himalayan of the family.
Correct.
Right? And for me, that has always been the reason why the Classic feels extra special. Because it can do so much while having this peaceful vibe about it.
Correct.
Right? And with that out of the way, okay, hit me.
Yeah, so cornering, no issues at all.
Yeah.
I did have an issue with the handlebar because the handlebar turns inwards towards you. So your wrists aren't straight, they are a little bit like this. Right wrist, I was being very peaceful with the motorcycle. So I was not opening too much, I was not closing too much. So this wrist was okay. But I was using the clutch here and there initially, and that started to hurt my hand. After, on the second loop, I adjusted the span quite a bit. That seemed to help. But you will see me clutchless upshifting and downshifting on the motorcycle. Sequential transmissions, clutchless upshifts are perfectly okay. If you do them correctly, no damage happens. Downshifts, super, super, super cautious. They can cause damage when you get them wrong. I'm very proud that I didn't get a single downshift wrong on this trip. But the reason why I had to do that is because my hand was starting to hurt from the clutch. So one of the things I want you to watch out for on the test ride, if you go for a Classic 650, is are you comfortable with your wrists being like this? It's not a natural position for everybody.
But that's not the natural classic stance. The classic stance is more this.
It's not. The Classic actually puts you like this.
Yeah.
And this handlebar, it bends back towards you a little bit. It's a weird decision to make, I think. It does create ergonomics issues, I think. But you will have to work out if you're comfortable with it or not, because I had an issue, but I didn't hear a wrist ache issue from anyone else. So maybe it's just my advanced age catching up with me. I don't know. But clutchless downshifts, they worked. And once I could just ignore my left hand, then the bike just settled into a pattern and it works really well. You can ride it a little bit aggressively by using lots of gear changes if you feel like it, or you just leave it in a reasonably middle gear, second, third, and you can do a lot of work in that gear because that twin is just super flexible.
Yeah, the grunt it has is
No
awesome.
issue. You will also think that the brakes require quite a bit of work.
Okay.
And you will interpolate that, oh, it's 250 kilos, so yeah, obviously the brakes are going to. That's not actually the case.
Okay.
I discovered it by accident because I had to adjust the span. The levers are the brushed from the Super Meteor, which are chunky fat levers.
Yeah.
The problem with chunky fat levers is they have curved the top surface. And you feel like your finger's on the lever, but it's actually on top of the lever and not in front of it. So your leverage actually is lower.
Okay.
So if you adjust the span on your Super Meteor today, adjust it closer than you think is necessary, and you'll get your fingers in front of the lever as they're supposed to be, and suddenly you'll discover your brake feels a lot lighter than it did like your last time you rode it. So one of the issues with these really fat levers is that the full flat front surface is actually further away from you than you think. So the span has to be less than you think. It has to be closer to your hands.
Lovely detail.
Once I did that, then the brakes worked fine. Again, the rear brake is very strong and it's a little hard to modulate. This is common to a multiple sequence of these 650cc Royal Enfields, where this is an oversized rear brake and there's no real bite. It sort of suddenly grabs. You will get used to that as well. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but I think it's something Royal Enfield could definitely improve further.
And you said you didn't give the rim size. Rim size is 18s, I'm guessing.
So the front rim is a 19, the rear is an 18. Okay. These are steel hubs, steel spokes, aluminium rim. These are not tubeless, and as far as I can tell, there is no plan to have a tubeless option at all. But since they are aluminium rims, you can use Outex or one of those other solutions to seal up the inside and in theory convert the bike into a tubeless conversion. You could do this. They usually last about 2 or 3 years before you have to reevaluate whether it is still holding air or not. For many people, it will be worth doing. The rear is a radial, the front is not.
Okay. And the tires were good through, I mean,
tires are MRF. I've forgotten what the branding is. I'll put that up. They're good tires. They're grippy tires. No undue movement happened. We didn't hit any real dirt patches or any real wet patches. The beauty of going to Kunur is you can hide your suspension as much as you want because there's no potholes to hit really. But I did, for example, you will see this piece of footage where there's a bus coming at me and it's in my lane. And there was a little runoff that they'd built out of cement or concrete. And I went onto that and you could immediately feel that that surface was rough. Okay. There were 2 potholes as you exit Kunur. I hit both of them on both my loops just to make sure. And it did not feel like this is super firm, but it did not feel as compliant as a classic 350 either. Okay. So I have not got the details from Royal Enfield yet. Once I do, I'll put up a note. But as far as I can tell, these are running a slightly softer setup definitely than the shotgun. That's not saying much. I expect that when it comes here and goes on to Mumbai's concrete roads, there will be some amount of constant movement on this motorcycle. But if you were to compare the Super Meteor, which is the worst of this whole lot by absolutely miles, shotgun slightly better, this might be quite a bit better. If you are a shotgun owner and you've been wondering what to do about your damn motorcycle, these shocks might have an improvement. Watch for the View story when it comes out because we're going to need to ride it in much better conditions for suspension testing than we were. It was a beautiful place to ride the bike. I loved riding it there.
I think I'm going to set up a petition on Circle saying we need a MotorInc First of the Classic 350, Classic 650 Part 2, just to clear that up. Yeah. That has to happen.
Yeah, so my sense of it is the few speed breakers that I tried to jump or not slow down for, the few places where I had to go off the road to find a little bit of bumpy surface, the 2 potholes that I hit 2 times each, this is not a super compliant classic 350 style motorcycle. This is 100% firmer than that. Yeah. Is it so firm as to be annoying? I have a feeling it will get close to that. But we will establish this once we get the test bike here.
Okay. So the upside for now is that it's at least not as terrible as the others.
On the face of it, no, it's not as terrible as the others.
All right. So, but is it going to be?
I mean, if I had the same feelings from the Bear would have just become the easiest 650 to recommend from Royal Enfield.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I now know why the reason for why this mess up has happened also. We'll discuss it at the end.
Okay. As to why these suspension issues are happening.
I was given a little bit more context this time.
Okay. As to why these suspension issues are happening.
Yeah.
Okay then. Technology.
What technology?
I was just checking, man. It's a classic. No technology. So this doesn't have the tripper, whipper, and
The tripper is standard.
okay.
Tripper is not technology. Tripper is a screen that shows you arrows. It's there. It's standard now.
Okay.
The meters are the same as the classic 350. There is a gear indicator, which I can't remember if it was there earlier or not. Please leave me a comment if you can. And with little up arrows and down arrows to let you know that you could be in a better gear than this current selection. Fuel gauge seemed to be okay, but Royal Enfield fuel gauge is a kind of iffy. Get used to your bike and then you'll realize, can you trust it or not? I think in my experience, most Royal Enfield fuel gauges you don't trust too much. The Himalayan might be an exception, the Gorillas might be an exception, but generally you don't trust them too much.
Okay.
That aside, honestly, nothing more to report. So overall impression, very, very feelsome motorcycle. If you live in a place with good roads, I know that you're going to enjoy riding this motorcycle. Don't buy this because it has a 650 twin, so I'm going to hustle this motorcycle.
Okay. I can't recall right now about the shotgun. Did you ride the bike with the seat also added on? You had removed it, right?
It came to us with the seat very briefly, but Royal Enfield's agenda was to not have the seat in any of the media fleets.
Right.
So very, very rapidly people came and they removed the seat.
Okay. So have you ever used it with the seat?
No.
No.
But these bikes have flatter exhausts. So at least legroom wise, it's not like the Interceptor which had upswept exhaust and that used to push your feet up.
Correct.
At least from that perspective, these will be easier for two-up riding. But are they fundamentally designed for two-up riding? Looking at the seat, I didn't think so.
In one of the bikes, I remember you had said that if you load it up, like if there are two, it'll ride better. Had you said that for one of them?
It's for many of these Royal Enfields, and that's part of the context that I was given this time. Shall we go into it right now?
Okay, sure.
So I did ask Royal Enfield, how is it that there's 6 bikes in a row, suspension's gone haywire? And the only place where in this group it didn't go haywire is the Himalayan, which obviously has tremendous amount of suspension travel. It's really, really much harder to mess that up.
Yeah.
And basically they said that it seems like they've been trying to solve for a situation where two up and with a top box, the bike should behave itself.
Okay.
They've even said that we made accommodations for a rider has been careless and not checked their tire pressures and they're under pressure and still the bike should do its job.
Okay.
And I was like, but this is a pretty extreme scenario.
Yeah.
And why would you solve for something so extreme given that statistically this is almost an insignificant scenario, right? How much should a manufacturer work to protect its users from its own products when it's their fault, the user's fault? I mean, imagine me complaining to Yamaha saying your R15 doesn't handle. Yamaha will say, what's your tire pressures? And if I am half the recommended tire pressure,
they'll adjust the bike.
then the Yamaha guy will say, okay, so adjust your tire pressure, not less mess with the suspension. And the R15, I'm taking it as an example because R15 has no preload adjustment at the rear. And over X number of years of riding X generations of the R15, no one's ever complained that that suspension doesn't seem to work. It sets up an agenda. I'm a sporty motorcycle, I do these things, and then it delivers that product. So in Royal Enfield's case, I think the issue is they're solving for a case that doesn't exist. Which is why we've recommended to you one-on-one on our DMs, on motoring circles, etc., that if you're 110 kilos, 115 kilos, and you want to get a bear, go get a test ride. It might actually work
for you.
And we do have people in our circles who've said, yes, I am heavy. And the bear actually feels very nice.
All right.
So I think the issue is for these 6 motorcycles in a row, they've basically overcommitted to how much load will be put on the suspension and really ratcheted the stiffness up. And then Royal Enfield does this absolutely nonsensical thing where all of the suspension comes at minimum preload. Which means if you're 45, 50, 60 kilos, you have no latitude to go further down and create a softer feeling at all. And it's always the rear suspension that creates a problem. It is because of this. It is because you're saying, I need to account for the rider. Okay. I need to account for the pillion also. Rear suspension comes into play. I also need to account for a fully loaded top box, which is slightly overloaded and cantilevered off the back of this motorcycle. Which makes absolutely no sense to me. But now I'm aware that they're aware, so I'm expecting things will start getting solved. This was also the first time I heard somebody from Royal Enfield talking about people who are working on current products and how to improve current products, which I've never heard from Royal Enfield before. Which means, hopefully, in the next year and a half or two, Super Meteors, Shotguns, Classic 650s, Bears, Gorillas with more reasonable suspension setups should happen. I am saying this is my expectation. Royal Enfield has not said that this is actually going to happen, but I'm hearing the first noises in that direction. For the first time, I heard that they're aware that the headlight is not too effective.
Oh.
And that they're working on what they call their third generation headlight, which will hopefully solve this for once and for all.
And this has the same headlight, of course.
This has the same headlight, of course, and that implies that there is a second generation headlight in there which will never see light of day because it didn't produce enough light in the night. So I am hearing movement at Royal Enfield, which sounds promising to me. But to me, they've also told us, look, with the Classic 350, it's an India first product and the largest sales are here. But the twins are 50-50 divided between exports and India, so they have to account for all countries. I was like, it still doesn't make any sense that we are solving for rider and pillion and overloaded top box, etc.
Can I ask, how much is the Adventure for?
KTM Adventure S is 370X, so 20K more than this bike. And the X is 291. So from the base model, that's 50K.
Because I'm just thinking that, you know, to me, it always seems like Royal Enfield is, I mean, the bikes are kilo ke bhav se, which is why they're so heavy and which is why they can price them well. But I think they still have a lot of latitude left to do in that, within the price that they're selling the bikes at.
I think what I took away from the conversation with Royal Enfield this time was that we've got them pegged too high on the R&D ladder.
And that's exactly it. Because if that bike for 20,000 bucks more is giving you that kind of suspension, right? What is to stop you from giving you a more sophisticated suspension at the rear for this and solve it on all the bikes?
Yeah. So I was thinking about it. So one of the things that has happened to me since we are doing MotorInc First, this is our 50-something episode in total, is that I always have these moments where I'm saying, what do I say to Karthik about this thing? And I keep thinking about it. So I was in the taxi going from the hotel back to the airport, which is like a 3-hour run from Kunur to Kumtok to Kovai. And I was wondering, how do I explain the R&D situation? And the closest explanation I came to is that because many of Royal Enfield products present so well and because they feel so good to ride, we also think that their R&D is that kind of effective. And it is that kind of advanced and effortless, etc., etc. But the more I think about it, the more I think that's what we've got wrong. This is a relatively new team working in a very constrained environment because their legacy awareness causes lots of issues for them. Right? For example, they will say, oh no, we cannot have plastic switchgear on this bike. It's a classic. But the plastic switchgear exists. Okay.
Wait, one sec. You're saying the switchgear is actually metal?
That's what they said, yeah. Because the ones on the Super Meteor are brushed metal and these are now chromed.
Okay.
Right? So they will do things like this where they paint themselves into these little corners and there's no external pressure to paint yourself into this corner if you think about it. Right? For example, there was this 15-minute discussion on the triple clamp and how complicated it was to make the triple clamp, and it wasn't good enough to have it painted or stickered or embossed. It had to be machine embossed and finished like that, and inside those grooves machining it. Yeah, okay, I get it, right? You're building a story. But in the effort to output ratio, did you get the effort to output ratio right? I'm not convinced. And if you think about it, TVS, Bajaj and Hero, who come at this from the other side, where they have mass awareness, volume awareness, and then they're making premium products, some things that they get right is that their effort to output ratio calculations are more accurate. So they put in effort where it's required and you see an output. So arguably the Pulsar N125, it has a superior suspension experience to the Classic 650. But that bike is what, a lakh of rupees, a lakh 20 or something.
Yeah.
And this is at 3.5 lakh rupees, you can't even come close.
So what you're actually saying is that they have pockets of excellence, and one of those is the design aspect of it, let's say, and coming up with...
And yes, you're right. And I'm saying we are expecting more pockets of excellence that currently exist, and they will mature and refine into those excellent
but
pockets.
they're not there yet.
But they're not there yet.
And I think the telltale signs now should be staring at us in the face, the weight aspect of it. Because, I mean, you need to have better materials if you want to save weight. Maybe they don't have that experience. Right? And the other is the suspension angle, which is, we've always said suspension is one of the toughest things to do. And if we keep the Classic 350 out of it,
and the Himalayan,
and the Himalayan out of it,
the rest of the range,
the rest of it shows them very poorly.
Yes, 100%.
This makes sense.
Yeah. So we say Bajaj quality can be an issue. but Bajaj quality has consistently improved. But because they're making such a huge variety of products for such a huge number of brands, their exposure to how to fine tune quality, how to present a different user experience, etc., is a very, very evolved format of it. And Bajaj has God knows how many platforms in production right now. It's hard to keep track. And if you look at Royal Enfield, 3 engines, 4 frames, that's the entire product range. If I were to take Bajaj and say, can you make products with just 3 engines and 4 frames? That would be, I don't know, 25% of what they make today. Right? If you look, if you look at Hero, commuters and scooters and larger machines, and they're working on an off-road bike and road machines, their exposure also is larger. TVS, same thing. So if you look at how these 3 manufacturers, I'm taking these 4 Indian examples because they're closest to each other. All the other brands have more exposure to more ways of doing these things than Royal Enfield does. And therefore, when I was reaching the airport, I said the best way I can put it to Karthik is that this is a very old company. It's very well established. It's very well set in its ways. But when it comes to R&D, it's actually a new company that is still finding its feet. And therefore, there are hiccups.
Makes sense.
Right? If you look at Bajaj, Hero and TVS, again, R&D setups are old. People have been there for a long time. And people are working in a rhythm and flow. Royal Enfield created the brand new UK Technical Center. Then they hired people from all over the earth. Then a whole bunch of people from Triumph, etc. It's still a setup that is finding its feet and coming together. For that kind of newness to be able to produce products like this, I think actually it is pretty admirable. But for them to be flawless, effortless products, more refinement, more time, more flow, more smoothness, and more perspective has to happen.
I think there's some kind of course correction is definitely required, because I think the weight angle of it, as much as we say that, we don't feel it, and you don't for the most part. But fundamentally, that is not okay, I think, anymore. Because when you're talking about a bike getting 240, 250 kilos for a
There's
650.
2 ways to manage weight. One is not to have it, and the other is to hide it well. Royal Enfield has learned how to hide it really well in most places. Now I think the next step is to learn not to have it in the first place.
And when we look at this competition, and again, I'm coming back to the 390 Adventure, which is a impressive bike in terms of what it's managing to do, plus in terms of what materials and equipment and hardware it's using, and still managing that price point.
Correct.
Right? So why can't, in that sense, then why can't RE do it?
And there's no electronics apart from ABS on this bike either. Should we not have 50 bhp bikes have traction control? Basic traction control at least?
Especially when they're so heavy also, because that, in that scenario, I'm thinking going in a corner, sand, oil, something, I wouldn't mind a helping hand there.
Yeah, I agree.
Scary.
Yeah, it is. No, I am not disputing it at all. I think the Himalayan should have had cruise control. I think it definitely needed traction control. If I'm expected to be out on the highway by myself traveling, I would like backup.
All right.
Right? I would like to be able to lift my bike by myself.
Hopefully not get there. Anyways, cool. So, from question standpoint, anything from circles now?
Yeah.
All right. You want to do that?
Quick summary
first. Okay. So today we've spoken about the Classic 650, which is a lookalike of the Classic 350, but a bigger, meatier looking motorcycle. And I think that is a great formula in terms of the personality and the appeal that it will have. The Classic was always handsome, and the 650 with that additional size and that bulk of that engine will feel like a different, richer experience just because of that. Then also because of the engine. The 650 Twin has been a brilliant engine from Royal Enfield for its smoothness, for its easy to ride nature, and for the performance that it offers. Here on the Classic, in fact, the gearing has been shortened a bit. The rear sprocket has 2 additional teeth compared to the shotgun. And the shotgun reference, just very quickly, this is effectively the same motorcycle. They were developed together. The chassis is the same, but there are some subtle differences. There's the seating position, which is not very classic-y, but a little bit more retro style cruiser, I would say. So your hands are turned in a bit, whereas in the Classic you sit like this. The shotgun seating position is more different. It's more bobber, of course. The big difference that you'll see is in the feel of the motorcycle, and the design here is, of course, like the Classic. one of the big differences that I spotted when I was looking at the bike, both of them have twin exhausts, is the effectively the rear fender. It's a much bigger fender. It's beautifully shaped. I noticed that's a complicated shape actually that they've managed to pull off. And like Shumi said, that it looks odd when the bike is not loaded because it feels high, and then it actually looks bulky. But when the bike is loaded, it settles down, and then it looks nice.
Correct.
So this bike is also available with a pillion seat, but like on the shotgun, it's something that can't be easily bolted on or removed, requires tools, requires effort, and is not something you can do on the roadside. Other than that, the chassis is the same. The difference, and this is a key difference which Shumi thinks exists, it's definitely better in terms of the rear suspension than the shotgun, the Super Meteor, the Gorilla, and the Bear
And Hunter.
and Hunter. But how good is it? And is it good enough to be good or good enough to be bearable? Is the question that we'll have to figure out once we get
Yes.
the bike here. Because Shumi went up to Kunur to ride it, and over there the roads were largely smooth. He had to actually go off the road to feel some of the rough surfaces, and there were 2 potholes which he hit repeatedly. And over that, it felt less stiff than on the other 650 twins that
Yeah.
he's ridden recently. Other than that, there's really a good bike to ride in terms of the feel. While the gearing has been shortened, it's still a calm and easygoing motorcycle. It has the grunt if you want to ride faster, but the zone that it enjoys and you will enjoy with the bike is this, hey, let's take it a step down and enjoy the ride. And that's the kind of vibe it has. It's riding on a 19 and 18-inch wheel combination, which is as expected to get the stance right of this bike. It's got spoked wheels, which are obviously not tubeless. It's got a aluminium rim. It's got steel spokes and a steel chromed hub, and there's been a lot of attention to details like that to give it that classic look, including, which I can't imagine right now, chromed switch cubes, and they're the same weird kind of toggle kind
Yeah.
of switches that you have. And those are the few ergonomic issues. Right, from the rider's cockpit, the view will be classic. It's got that same design for the headlamp nacelle, and I'm guessing it'll be scaled up for this bigger bike, but effectively nothing on this bike is shared with the classic 350. This is a bigger motorcycle, so everything's been done again. The good news is, aside from the suspension, which seems to have been improved in some form and fashion, Royal Enfield is looking to improve and better their motorcycles by fixing the issues. This is the first time on this ride that Shumi's heard of conversations about improving existing products and not just conversations about future products, which means there's a better headlight in the works. There is
Better suspension setups.
better suspension setups in the works. So all these things are showing us that Ari is looking to fix these issues, which is good for the future. But as of now, the classic 650, handsome motorcycle. I'm saying that.
Yeah, it is. It is. No,
Handsome
absolutely it is.
motorcycle, has the right kind of vibe. Ergonomically, that one aspect, the handlebar being turned in, might be an issue for some of you. Shumi had wrist take so much so that he started to avoid using the clutch and just went clutchless.
Yeah, and
on
you'll
the
see
shifts.
that on the Insta 360 footage that this hand is positioned normally on the throttle, and this hand is actually like this, and you can see a lot of the throttle sticking out here. It's because I'm trying to find an angle from which when I use the clutch, it doesn't create a strain on top. And in the morning loop, we were in a group, and this group was going pretty rapidly, so lots of clutch action. And about halfway through, this had started to hurt. So then I was avoiding using the clutch as much as possible, leaving it in the same gear if I could. And then when I was on my own, then I wanted to ride at a much calmer pace to experience it. And then I said, I'm just not touching the clutch if I can avoid it, and I just didn't. So.
And a very interesting insight that Shumi provided was that the levers on this, they are span adjustable, which you should adjust, because what he's pointed out is that the levers are very chunky, and the top edge of it has a radius to it, which makes them a little bit longer for your fingers to reach over and get to the flat portion. So if you adjust them and pull them in a little bit closer than you normally would, you'll actually have a better feel for what's happening and a sense of lightness which will reduce the strain. So do try that out, and that you said would also be applicable for the shotgun.
Super Meteor.
Super Meteor, sorry.
Whichever bike you're riding, if you find that the front surface is radiused out, so where you have a long curve before the flat part starts, just bring the levers closer. You'll immediately feel like everything's easier.
And in terms of the braking, Shumi said that you might think that it's feeling a little lazy on the brakes. It's got enough power.
Yeah.
It's just that's how it feels. It's not an issue to do with the weight, and the weight itself is not something that you'll feel when you're riding. This is a motorcycle that you can ride confidently around corners. The tires have got good grip.
Yep.
It's easy to steer. He said very, very decent in terms of how it handles. So it's a motorcycle that's again setting a tone in which it likes to be enjoyed. It's not functionally flawed in this regard. It's something when you get into the zone in the rhythm with, you will.
It makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, it'll make
It'll
sense.
make sense.
Price-wise, it's the top spec variant is 3.53 lakhs.
3.50.
3.50 lakhs, which is
So
basically
the top version of the Classic 650's price is 350.
Ah.
Easy to remember, man.
So this is, and the variants are basically about the color options,
3 variants in India.
and the top spec is the black chrome.
Yeah.
And then there's the maroon and white, whatever that's called.
No, the teal is the middle.
Acha, teal is the middle. Okay.
And the bottom ones, which are 337, those are the two colors, the blue and the red.
Do they all have that cursive Royal Enfield on it?
Only the bottom two.
Oh, thank God.
Only the bottom two.
Okay.
In fact, you might notice this when you park the bike on the side stand and look at it. The design of the logo on the tank, the Royal Enfield logo with the shield, etc., is designed for the chrome model, and it's not designed for the colors. So the teal will look a little weird from the side.
Okay.
Because what happens is the chrome has the chrome surface in the middle, which is the badge, and it's centered on the chrome. Below the chrome is a lot of painted black, and then the pinstripes in the middle, right? On the teal, it's just a badge. So there's just this entire painted surface at the bottom, which just looks like it's not centered, it's weird.
I know it's not important, but you like the cursive thingy?
Does it need an opinion, honestly?
To me, that, I don't know, somehow that's the one thing that I keep looking at. Because I saw that color and I was like,
I don't.
okay. So with that out of the way, anything else remaining? Prices we spoke about, at the lower end, it's
3.7.
3.37, 3.4, right, which is just again for the colors. There's no real difference in terms of the hardware, and you get the tripper as standard.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
And there is no maroon and chrome or all maroon because that they're saving for the Bullet 650, which inevitably must exist. I did ask Royal Enfield saying, so that means the Bullet 650 should come, right? They all smiled and saying, yeah, come on, man, this is obvious now. Nobody said a word about yes or no, but they all smiled like,
It's just a matter of time.
yeah, just a matter of time. So if they were to do the playbook, then the Bullet 650 should come pretty soon. It will have a single seat with more foam. It will have a taller handlebar. And hopefully a slightly softer suspension setup.
All right.
That's it.
Okay, so that's it from questions from circles. We may not have called out your question, but we've covered all the questions that have been asked.
And thank you for
in
the
some
questions.
form. Yeah, thanks a lot for that. So yeah, so that's about it for the questions. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, Scram 440.
It's coming.
Hopefully now. There were some hiccups. I've been told why the hiccup was there. I'm not allowed to discuss it, so it's fine. But whatever the hiccup was is behind them now. I think deliveries have just started, or more or less whatever the backlog was has just been cleared as you're watching this. So we are expecting now the Scram 440 to come.
I have something to say. You know what this entire conversation has reminded me of? Who it has reminded me of?
Who?
Kia.
Why?
Good looking, suspension
Yeah.
issues. Same scenario.
But you remember you said that Kia seems to fix suspension quietly along the way?
yeah,
I'd like to see that.
yeah, that's what we'd like to see now from Royal
Yeah,
Enfield.
I'd like to see that.
Cool. If you have any more questions about the Classic 650, do let us know in the comments. And obviously, Circles is where we are talking with you guys quickly and far more closely. We'd love it if we could have it over there. Otherwise, YouTube is fine. And what's next? Anything that they can expect?
As we are recording this, the only confirmation we have immediately going is the KTM Enduro R, the 390. By that time, I think the Scram 440 test bike should have arrived.
Okay.
By that time also, I'm expecting the Aprilia 210 457 should also arrive. Apparently, the India and the European schedule had a mismatch.
Right.
And therefore, there were delays in the Indian media fleet being deployed after their first event that they did outside Bengaluru. That's the actual issue. There's no other hiccup going on. That's the three that I'm sure will happen. And then in the backdrop are the Suzuki E-Access. There is the Honda Activa Electric. And is there anything else that I'm forgetting? No, I think that's it.
All right. Awesome. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the comments.